Hello, everyone, and welcome to Quadrant 4 Politics, the podcast where we discuss news and politics from a conservative and libertarian perspective, but we welcome people from all over the political spectrum. We appreciate the opinions of everyone because everyone has a valid opinion that should be discussed, I think.
Sure.
Be sure to check us out on YouTube and SoundCloud. SoundCloud is where we pay a premium, so you should listen to it there because I think, personally, it's a better experience, but YouTube is fine as well. More people use YouTube, and that's understandable. It has a better comment system. Speaking of comments, you should leave a comment on this episode letting us know what you think, your opinions on the topics that we talk about, and you have a chance to be discussed on our 0.5 version of this episode. This is episode 8, I believe. So you would be possibly brought up on episode 8.5, or you can email us at this special email address, quadrant4politics@gmail.com. That is the number 4, not the letter spelled out 4. Let me see here. Speaking of 0.5 episodes, we just did an episode 7 about the Electoral College, and then we just recorded the comment episode 7.5 where we responded to comments about the Electoral College, so definitely check out those ones. And today's episode is a really simple schedule. First thing we're going to do is go through the grab bag.
I get to pick.
Yep, Matt gets to draw as always. And then the topic of the day, the critical question of the day.
Wait, shouldn't we wait? Let's make them wait.
No, we don't need to tease them.
Okay, well, I guess it'll be in the title.
I don't want to turn them on and leave them. The critical question of the day is, should the military allow transgenders? And we spent at least 10 minutes on that title, so it better be a goddamn good title. Should the military allow transgenders? Okay, so let's start off with our grab bag question just to break the ice.
I get to pick.
While Matt is going through them, don't be so loud with the plastic bag.
But before we wanted people to hear the plastic bag, though, remember? You said put it up to the mic. Okay.
Yeah, but then it became really loud.
Picking a question.
All right, before he reads this question, Jesus Christ, the sound bars just went up. But before he reads the question, I just want to say that these questions came from one of the political compass tests. And what we did was we took all those questions, cut them up, put them in the grab bag, and that's what we're going to do one of those right now. And just so everyone knows, the political compass is something that we think is fun, but we don't necessarily 100% agree with its outcomes or even the
methodology.
The methodology of it. So go ahead, Matt. Can you read the question?
Yes, the question. This is a good one for us because we are very different when it comes to this. Question is, it's a statement, and then you reply with strongly disagree, agree, strongly agree.
Okay.
Today's statement is, you cannot be moral without being religious. That's question 53 out of 62.
This is a good question.
This is a good question. And before on one of our podcasts, I said that most of my answers were agree or disagree. I don't really usually do the strongly because I like to see, all sides of it, and sometimes even find the other side to be right. But on this one, I have to strongly disagree.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, huh.
And that is because religion doesn't make you moral. It shapes your morals as to where you can still be a good person without being religious. Some of the best people I know aren't religious,
mm-hmm.
and I've always said, it's more fun to hang out with my liberal friends, so because they're fun. I personally have a set of spiritual beliefs that I follow and I think are good, and I think they would be good for everyone. It doesn't mean, though, that the people who don't follow them aren't good people doing good things. But with both moral and religion, there's different context to those words, but I think if you just take this in the simplest of meanings, can you be moral and non-religious? Absolutely. People do it all the time. People have causes and beliefs they're part of, and they don't believe in a God for whatever reason, beyond me. But, so for this one, shockingly, I do have to say I strongly disagree.
Can you read to me? Oh, I'll read it. Yeah, you can read it to me. Read it to me.
You cannot be moral without being religious.
Okay. I also would say strongly disagree. I don't think you need to be religious to have good morals. That's what it's asking, right?
Pretty much.
Okay.
You could also say, do you need to have religion to be moral?
Right. So yeah, I strongly disagree, and the
You
reason
strongly,
why.
disagree. Okay.
Yeah. The reason why is because I see morals coming from every aspect in life, and I think that humans are naturally good. I don't think I would be a libertarian if I didn't think that humans were naturally good, because I believe that they should be able to rule on their own without the strong hand of government, because I believe that the strong hand of government is often leading us in the wrong direction. So I believe that humans are naturally good without religion. Also, I'm a huge fan of superheroes and comic books. Superman is my favorite superhero, and I've probably learned more good morals from Superman than I have from Christians I see on Fox News. Yeah, honestly, I can see there's a lot of hateful Christians out there who preach nothing but hate, and there's a lot of Christians out there who are just in it to scam people out of their money. And I've met several comic book fans who are fans of Superman, and I think that they might be more morally positive people than some of the Christians out there.
Do I fall into this group of Fox News Christians?
I don't think so.
Okay.
You're pretty reasonable.
I'm reasonable.
And that's not to say, like, I grew up in the church. I'm an atheist now, but I grew up in the church, and I fondly remember my church. They gave me a lot of opportunity. My first job was at the church. I did a lot of music through the church. And I have friends from the church and stuff. It's just not for me, and I don't think that's necessary for morals. But I believe that any kind of cultish kind of thing can breed both positive and negative elements, whereas atheism, can also breed positive and negative, but I don't think that religion is what you need to have those good morals. And plus, there's a lot of religions out there that teach you bad morals.
Yeah.
Like, there's disagreements over whether or not the Bible is for or against gay marriage, but I think the moral thing is to be, let people do what they want to do. As long as it's not affecting you, I think that it's important to just, the only reason people are against gay marriage is because God says no. I don't think that there's anyone who says, it's just wrong that a man fucks a man in the ass. Sure, you can't get pregnant that way, but is it really wrong?
Well, it used to be, let's say 100 years ago, because that's just not the way things were done. There was normal and there was not normal, and we're going to get into this a little bit later. But when I say normal, I don't mean bad. I don't mean the good versus the non-good. What I mean when I say normal is what typically happens, and then what's the exception. And I would say that there is a biological reasoning for people going weird two guys, weird two girls. I think
no one says weird two girls. They only say cool.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I would say that it's not just religion. Religion's maybe why we still think that today,
yeah.
But I don't think that's what started it. I think had there never been any talk of God, nobody ever considered the concept. Back when we were still in caves, if two cavemen started humping, they would have gotten clubbed to death just like
I think that could be argued, because if humans, it's hard to say this, but I think human evolution is experimental. I'm sure that several cavemen experimented with
that wasn't my
homosexuality.
point overall. My point's just that you see things differently from the times, for God's sakes, like NAMBLA has their own website and organization, and scary enough, like the idea of ageism is growing, And
Well, back in the day, like in ancient days, like Egypt times and stuff like that, people had sex with children, and that was not necessarily out of the norm, because, as I believe, I'm a fan of lowering the age of consent, because I think that once you've hit the puberty that your body says that you're physically ready for sex, that you should be mentally ready.
So our morals have changed despite religion becoming less popular. Our morals have changed in the opposite directions, to where we're saying we want to limit sex because it's with children. So I don't think it's necessarily just religion, but I mean, of your overall point that religion can lead to bad, obviously, because so can anything that you become deeply invested in and you become passionate about. If you become passionate about something, you have the opportunity to become overly passionate and unrealistic or violent with it, and that goes beyond just your outlook on gay marriage or gay people. So, but again, I think my main point to this question would be, for me personally, it would be, how does my faith say I should react to certain situations? How should I behave daily? So it's not that I have morals because I'm religious, it's that I act a certain way because of those beliefs. So
Do you still have that slip?
yeah,
What number is it?
number 53 out of 62.
Out of 62. Good to know. All right, we're officially 11 minutes in, so let's go ahead and go on to our topic of the day. The critical question is, should the military allow transgenders? However, we're not just going to discuss the military. We're going to be discussing the transgender people and movement in general as well. But let's start with the military.
I did put down, which I've never done because I don't believe in them, a trigger warning. It says, while our discussion will be reasonably professional and open-minded, probably not the most PC of issues, and we are looking to discuss this openly, not watching out for other people's feelings. So
yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that you and I both don't think that we should just go start lynching transgender people or anyone who supports them. But I think it's some of the SJWs might disagree because we're both straight white men, but we should bring it up. We're both cisgender
that's what's important
straight
in
white
this.
men. Yeah, I think some of them think that we shouldn't have an opinion, but I think that most reasonable people are okay with us just discussing, the topics of the day. So what do you think? Do you think should the military allow transgenders?
Okay, well that's I thought we were going to talk a little bit more about some of the background behind it.
Okay, I can bring up some stuff.
Because the question's kind of like, there's a lot to unload there.
Yeah. Well, let's bring up something right now. Obviously, President Trump, our glorious leader, President Trump,
Our morally and religious righteous.
the only man we should trust, the man we should look up to. He is against transgenders in the military, and he tweeted out one day in 2017
I
saying
believe it was in July of 2017.
Yeah, he said.
18? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it was 2017. But anyways, he said, fuck transgender people.
I don't think he said that.
No, he said, I don't have the exact quote, but he said, transgender people should not be allowed in the military. And
he didn't say should not be. He made...
Oh, yeah.
He made a famous
statement.
tweeter declaration where he said
Yeah.
transgenders from this point will no longer be allowed to serve in the military.
So. And that was obviously declined until late 2018 when it was allowed to partially go through by the Supreme Court. I'm sure you'll get into that because you know more about that. But basically, I went into the reasoning, and when Obama was president, he was pretty open about it. From what I read, I was mostly looking at the Trump stuff, but with Obama, like in the history, in the past, there were lots of different bans on transgender and stuff. I mostly didn't look at that because it's not relevant to today. Obama, it seemed like he was mostly cool about transgender people being in the military. As a matter of fact, there was that one transgender person who leaked some NSA secrets, and he pardoned her. It was a transgender male to female. He pardoned her before that was like one of the last things he did, I believe.
Which was kind of controversial.
It was very controversial, yeah, because it was like an Edward Snowden kind of situation. But anyways, Trump and the Republicans, the reason that they use for transgender, now we don't know if they think that they're just against transgenders and that this is the reason they're scapegoat, but the reasoning that I found for why Trump and the Republicans don't want transgenders in the military is because the military provides health care to all the soldiers, and they say that transgenders, because of something called gender dysphoria that was previously known as gender identity disorder, is something that costs the military too much, and it's an unnecessary expense, and that not allowing transgender people in the military anymore will save the military a ton of money, and there won't be as many distractions for soldiers and stuff like that. So that is the reasoning, as far as I'm aware, of why Trump and the Republicans don't want transgenders in the military, is because they're too expensive for the military to care for them healthcare wise, and that gender dysphoria, aka gender identity disorder, is something that it's a disqualifying disease, kind of like is asthma. You can't get to the military with asthma, right?
So when you asked me the question
Bone
about
spurs, because that's what Trump had. They're
equivalent shin splints.
Shins. No, he had bone spurs.
So when you originally asked me, should they be allowed, and the thing is there's so many things that disqualify a person, and there's so many situations around transgender people that it seems like would automatically disqualify them if you took the transgenderness out of it. For example, I was looking up, there was a whole section on this website I was on that said genitals, and it said for males, has 1 or 2 missing testicles due to cancer, is missing their penis.
Wait, so this is a military site saying you can't join the military?
It was like things. I don't know if it was an official military site, but it was a list of what somebody made of everything you can get excluded for.
Interesting. Okay.
And so if you're a male and you can get excluded for not having, for having missing genitals because whatever problem that might cause, and we're talking about a male identifying male,
right.
then it seems like transgender becomes the way to get out of that. So if all of a sudden I had crotch cancer and all of it had to get chopped off, I wouldn't be allowed in under this, article that I read. But I could say I'm transgender and I'm transitioning, and then...
Something I want you to be clear about when you're talking about transgender people is whether they're transgender just by identity or simply just taking hormones, or if they're actually going through with the surgery, because I think that's something you and I might have a little bit of miscommunication on. When I talk about transgender people, I'm not always talking necessarily about people who are post-op or people who are even interested in getting an operation sex change surgery. So when you're discussing anything, just make sure you're clear about that.
Well, so
people who are looking for that surgery or not.
If we just talk about because I wanted to just talk about trans in general before we got into the military stuff. I think the most important thing to say is that regardless of what we say about transgender, and is it nature or is it nurture, and is it born that way or is it a mental illness, the number one thing I want to say, at least coming from my mouth, is that I am in any way trying to dehumanize anyone or take away their humanity and say, well, because you're transgender, you're less than human, or you're less than a person than I am, or you're less than a cis person or a straight person. Yep. Obviously different, but we're all different in some way. But I myself have a lot of problems, not just with whether I'm labeling it pre-op or post-op, but when somebody says a trans woman to me, the first thing I think of is a female to male. And I know it's the other way around. Yeah, it's the other way around. It's like my brain can't get over that. And also...
It's not allowed because Matt's brain can't get over
exactly. it. Exactly. And it's like pronouns and stuff, Yeah. Like I will still mix up pronouns, especially for people who look kind of like in between. Or if I've known people who are transitioning, or I've known a couple people where I've known them so long that I just cannot call them by the other one. And I'm not doing it out of a political agenda or to be spiteful or hateful. I'm just doing it because that's what my mind does. It brings you back to the familiar. And not every time somebody misgenders somebody or gets a term mixed up, it doesn't always mean, it's hatred. It's just a new confusing situation. It's like the new civil rights thing, and
people who do it out of hatred are usually pretty vocal that they're doing it out of hatred anyways.
Well, this whole thing, I don't want, whatever decision I come to on our final question, I don't want it to be confused with hate, because I'm coming at it from a logical perspective where I'm not thinking of any person in general. So let's say in the end I say, well, it's costing too much money, you know, that's not to say that I hate transgender people. It's just that I'm saying, well, the military needs to save money and they shouldn't be spending on that. That's not what my idea is, but I'm just saying, my point here is not to dehumanize people, but we do have to talk about these real issues. And
So you don't want to talk about the military first, you just want to talk about transgender?
well, I kind of just said what, you know.
Because I have some stuff I can go into if you just want to talk about the general stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I have some notes with me, and the first thing I want to say is clearly I'm not a scientist. I don't have like a master's in transgender studies or gender studies by any means. All the information I'm bringing up today is stuff I found on the internet. Another thing that I want to bring up is that research on transgender studies is very limited, and there's a lot of opposing solutions or like conclusions. So there's like research suggests different things. Some people will quote research that says one thing, whereas there's other studies that say another thing. Also, the sample size is so small. One of my statistics says that transgenders are 0.6% of the U.S. population. There just isn't a whole lot of people out there to do a whole lot of research on. So the research on transgender stuff is really limited, and no one's really 100% clear on everything. So everything I'm stating after this is, you know, with that grain of salt. Let me see here.
Also, what I brought up was that each of these statistics also comes with their own agenda. I'd love to like see an actual non-bias, you know, one that's not trying to fit a pro-transgender or an anti-transgender, but it seems like that's what's happening. So.
Yeah. I have so much stuff here. It's kind of hard to decide where to start, but I guess I'll start with the facts, is that sex is biological and gender is how you feel. So sex is what genitals are between your legs, and gender is what your brain tells you that you are.
Yeah, that's only a recent thing. In the past, sex and gender have always been the same thing.
Well, there's also research on it that's really interesting, something I learned today. Sex and gender develop differently, and what that means is men and women have different brains physically. Like, they literally have different brains, and that's controversial, but men and brain literally have different
Men
brains.
and brain?
Men and women
Let's
literally
not give them too much credit.
Men and women literally have different brains. Like, the way they are physically feel is different, and there have been studies on transgender women, so male to female, who have a male organ, sex, or they have a wiener, and they have a female brain. They literally have a female brain, but they have a penis. And so I didn't know that before, but it turns out that there is science saying that yes, the brain does tell the person that they are of a different gender, but their biology, their sex, is what they were assigned at birth, or their what's the genitals between their legs. So there is that going on. I learned that today. That was pretty interesting. And that they develop separately. Sex is developed in the womb, whereas gender like comes of age. Like, your brain develops over time as you're growing up, you know. Let me see here.
So
can also
I comment on something? I've heard about the brain thing because here's kind of my overall philosophy, and again, I'm going to say something that's going to offend somebody, but I'm sorry. When you have an anorexic person look in the mirror and they say, I'm too fat, we don't say that person is fat identifying. We say that person needs help. So when somebody wants to chop off their genitals, I kind of think of it the same way. And my thought on it has been that, well, if we could just prove that these people were actually born in the wrong bodies, then there'd be no more discussion of whether it's a mental illness. And so I've actually I've heard of these studies about how a transgender person's brain responds the same way as the opposite sex. But one of the arguments against that is you're not getting those scans from a young age. You're not taking the baby from the womb and saying, this is a boy body, girl brain. They're growing up with the idea, and so then the brain can form that way. So, I mean, what do you say to that?
That's actually something I have here now. My source is my girlfriend, so take it with a grain of salt. But she told me, and I didn't do enough research to back this up, but she told me that there have been studies with mice that you can change their brain structure in development through their childhood of a mouse. And so the theory is that you can do the same thing with a human person, is that if a boy, someone who is born with a wiener, is raised as a female, their brain could essentially turn into the female brain. So it's the nature versus nurture idea, is that there's a chance, and like I said, my source is my girlfriend, so I don't know, but there's a chance that people can be raised to be transgender. Does that make sense? And it could also, people could force themselves to be, not necessarily force themselves to be transgender, not like it's a choice, but maybe they grew up and people are constantly harassing them for not being man enough, quote unquote. And then their brain says, like it's like a PTSD kind of thing. The brain's, in its development stages, develops into a female brain saying, I guess I'm not a man, and so I'm going to be a female, and that's like the brain's way of coping.
Yeah, no, so, I don't disagree with any of that at all, and that all makes perfect sense. It just goes kind of to support what I'm saying, is that I would, before, like, we could just rule it out as a mental thing, and maybe mental illness is too harsh, because I want to stress that I have tried to give it thought of what it would be like to be in a body that I just didn't like feel as one. Like, okay, I'm a little bit overweight and I don't like that, but it's not the same thing, Yeah. So just because I'm not super happy with my body doesn't mean I don't feel like I belong in my own skin. I've tried to think of it, and I can think of no greater hell on earth than that. A couple things, but that kind of ranks up there. And so when I say mental illness, I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm trying to understand. So again, I do have respect for people who are going through this situation, but I'm also just trying to understand it from a non-biased, logical standpoint.
Yeah.
And I can't go based off your feeling or because this is what happened to you specifically. So
the one thing that I constantly came across in my research is how they commit suicide more than cis people. They are more depressed and more anxious. I don't think that has anything to do with them actually being transgender. I think it's just that it's tough being transgender. I think that society isn't at that point yet where they're necessarily ready to accept people who are transgender.
I mean,
and I think that, like I said, that with that bullying situation, if you were bullied as a kid saying you weren't man enough and your brain decides to become a female brain, the bullying led to that, and that could be like, I hate that people use PTSD as like you can get it just from a social setting. I think that's really dumb, and people say that all the time nowadays. It's really cringy, but essentially like it's a negative thing, and it can cause mental illness if you consider anxiety and depression a mental illness.
Well, I mean, anxiety and depression are often thought of as two of the big ones we call mental illness. But like I said, there's few things worse than I think of than me thinking I'm in the wrong body.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that there's like, there might be some people, but most people look in the mirror, don't say, I love that.
No, but to say like, that's not me,
Yeah.
I've tried to just think about it, what it would be like, and it seems like it would be pretty awful. So my point in saying that was that what did you talk about before that? I lost my train of thought.
The brain structure, nature versus nurture.
Yes. Oh no, you were I'm sorry. You're talking about suicide. So are you saying like all the suicide comes from like bullying or being different?
I think it just being depressed and having anxiety can lead
Yeah,
to suicide.
well, and I would agree with that, but I would also think like part of it's just like imagine just like
And
not
being
feeling
unhappy,
right
yeah.
in your skin, you know?
Well, that on top of, being bullied and not accepted by society, going home and looking in the mirror and being like, man, I really hate the way I look. And there are transgender people who just, I'm using mostly male to female because there's most research on that, and that's something I've
That's
experienced
because
most
there's a
of my
lot
life.
more of them. So.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but
It
it seems
is.
that way. That they look at their penis and they just like they reject it, and some people can't. I don't have research on this, but from what I've been told is that there's some transgender people who can't get erections anymore just because they physically rejected their wiener. It's very strange. Another thing I wanted to bring up real quick is that there's a chance it could be genetic, like it could run in the family. I don't know if there's 100% proof behind that because there is also the gay gene saying that homosexuality can be genetic as well. So I don't know how true that is, but it was something that was brought up.
It was brought up. Where? What are you talking?
Among my studies.
Oh,
That
okay.
it could be genetic.
I mean, I would say for either transsexuality or homosexuality, the nature versus nurture question has not been settled, and anybody who says it's settled is again trying to push an agenda.
Yeah. Let me see. What else do I have here? For the most part, hormonal therapy. What is it called?
Hormone therapy.
Current evidence suggests transgender hormone therapy is safe when monitored, but these studies are limited with small subject groups, and it's still not like it's safe when it's monitored by a doctor. So people who are getting it, there are like black market hormones that people can take. Those are really dangerous. And if you're taking it on your own and not communicating with your doctor, that can lead to a lot of bad things. So it's something I'm going to bring up later, but I think the stuff they do to their body is one of the main things. I don't think it should be illegal, obviously. I'm a big supporter of everyone should be free to do what they want with their body. But I think that is the part where I stop. Like, you wouldn't encourage someone to be anorexic. Someone says, I want to be anorexic. It's like, yeah, go ahead. You're my friend. I'm looking forward to seeing you die. With transgender people, it's like, go ahead, dress as a woman, I don't care. But if I have a personal friend who says, hey, I'm going to get on hormones, if that's what they want to do and it's going to make them happy, I'll support them in that. But if they ask for my honest opinion, I'll be like, hey, I do not think that hormone therapy is necessarily the safest option. It seems like it's safe if you're monitored by your doctor, but there's still risks involved in that. It just doesn't seem like a good idea,
Yeah, and it seems like with a lot of what I've been reading from both studies and both transgendered people's testimonies is that they go from one stage of not being accepted, and then they come out and there's kind of like a high of like they feel better,
Yeah.
and then it's like they start wearing the clothes and there's the new high, and then they start taking the hormones. And then they think, okay, the next step is what's really going to make me happy, and that's the surgery.
Yeah.
And then, some people, the problem is there's people on both sides. There's people who've had the surgery and go on to love life, and then there's people who've had the surgery and they're like, I watched a video of a person who was like, as soon as I had the surgery, I knew it was the wrong thing to do.
Oh shit.
I watched this video about this guy who changed gender like 5 times. Like went back and forth.
With a surgery or just like?
No, surgery.
Huh. Okay.
And the thing is that clearly shows there's more of an identity issue there, and if it's tied into the gender identity, then obviously it's showing some sort of mental illness.
That person who changed genders several times, I would say, is more of an extreme case than something that we should use as an example. But I can see, and I've also heard testimonials of people who have gone through the gender reassignment surgery and regretted it afterwards, or several years later. or people who were doing hormones and they didn't like the way it affected their body. And unfortunately, some of the changes were permanent.
Yeah. And I've seen like online, I've seen either transgender people or friends of transgender people who say, please, for the love of God, before you do this, give it some thought, because like, okay, you can kind of undo it, but like you can't really undo it, you know. There's certain things are going to be permanent when you do them to your body. Our bodies scar. That's how it is.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's really hard to see the fact that like there's not really a great solution to it, because it seems like people struggle with some level of depression even afterwards. So
yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like becoming transgender, going through hormones, or like taking the hormones or doing the surgery necessarily equals happiness. Since we're talking about the surgery, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. Sex change surgery is a major surgery with significant risk and is irreversible. Also, you will be unable to reproduce afterwards. There are some cases where I did some research saying that they can put a woman's uterus into a man, but I mean, women have a hard enough time getting pregnant as is,
but I've never heard of that. Wow.
Yeah, and the other thing is that sex change surgery sounds like a mess. It just seems like the technology just isn't there yet. I went on Wikipedia and I read all the different like kind of surgeries that they can do and how they're done, and I went onto YouTube and I watched like the visualization of it. Like I didn't actually watch anyone get a surgery done because that's gross, but like I watched the visualizations, like 3D images of how it's done, and it just, God, it seems like they just scramble your genitals. I mean,
it's like body morphism,
Yeah,
it's like,
and if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do that. But it's like, man, that just seems like a bad idea. Like, you're fucking up your genitals. Like, one of the greatest human experiences is having sex. And what you're doing to your body is just putting, like, it's not going to work right. You're going to need to take estrogen for the rest of your life. You're going to have to self-lube your weird inverted penis vagina, and it's that surgery just seems like such a bad idea, and maybe in the future technology.
Just because of your orgasms, really?
Well, no, but like it seems like it would be a significant change that's not for the better. It seems like that surgery is something that just you're inhibiting yourself. I feel like that is on the opposite side of that surgery. You're not better off, in my personal opinion. A person who looks at their dick every day and that is what is causing their depression, getting rid of that might be the answer to their problems, but it just seems like a bad idea.
The problem is like I said, for some people, it seems like they've come out of it with happiness. For some others, not so much. Mm-hmm. And it's like you can't do a test run,
Yeah.
It's like once it's done, it's kind of like, I mean, unless you can just like set it aside in the freezer or something. I don't,
Well, also, no, it's irreversible. But that's another thing is the technology just isn't there yet, and who knows how long it's going to take for that surgery to be, or for the technology to be there for that surgery to be, one, reversible, and two, like, make you at all look like the gender you want to be, Like, who knows if we'll even ever, like, maybe one day they'll be able to do, what is it called when you get organs from someone else?
Transplant?
Yeah, transplant. Maybe one day they'll be able to do, like, take the vagina out of a dead person and then put it on you, Maybe one day we'll get to that point. But as of right now, that you're just scrambling your genitals, and I it's going to offend people, but it's like, I did the research and I watched the videos and it just seems like a bad idea to me.
I mean, if it offends people, sorry, but it's kind of the truth, Again, not trying to take away anybody's humanity or say you're less of a person because you feel that way, but I mean, you have a good point. There's, especially at this point in time, and I was even thinking about this beforehand, like, on the way to driving here to do the podcast, I was thinking, like, in Star Trek, they just, like, I love Star Trek, but they just, like, put, their scanner over somebody's arm and this huge cut just heals. So maybe in 100 or 200 years, they'll have the ability to do something like that with genitalia. I don't know, but right now, in any other case, when somebody wants to do an amputation that's not necessary, we stop them. Like we at least try to. We tell them no. There's a sexual fetish that people have. It's a small group, but they have a fetish of amputations, and some of them actually get amputations because it fulfills their fetish.
Yeah.
I think that's one situation where we'd be like, hey, don't cut off your arm for the orgasm,
Yeah.
like, and so it's different when you're talking about somebody who's not happy with inside their own body, but you're still talking about either, removing your chest or removing, underneath your pants. You're still talking about removing a major part of your body.
Yeah.
And especially with like mastectomies, those aren't always, the safest.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know.
And the female to male sex change surgery.
I don't know how that works.
Yeah, they most female to male transgenders do not get any kind of surgery to have a penis. They just take hormones that make their clitoris bigger, and so it can grow to like 2 inches or something like that. And then they kind of just use that. You doing okay, Matt?
Yeah. No, I was just about to cough.
Okay. It looked like you were throwing up, thinking about giant clits. But I have seen like a built penis, and what they'll do is they'll take flesh from like your inner arm or the side of your thigh or hip or something like that, and then they kind of just like roll it up into the shape of a wiener. It's really weird looking. It's kind of strange. It looks like a strap-on almost, but there are options. It's generally they don't usually do that, and it's not recommended. Let's talk about. Can we move on to a little bit different? Let's talk about the laws with them. How do you feel about bathroom use for transgenders? Should they be able to use whatever bathroom they feel like?
Whatever bathroom they feel like, absolutely not. Now, here's the thing: is that
Absolutely not.
Well, shut up. I'm going to get to my point.
Okay.
I saw this really good thing on Facebook that says, so you're one of those bigots that thinks people should use the bathroom of their own sex. And it showed like 4 very attractive women and 4 very attractive men. And the attractive women, it said these were all born male. And the males, it said these were all born females. And my thought was like, okay, well, then they can use the bathroom that fits, whatever gender they are now. Mm-hmm. My point is, I can't, as a person who's clearly a male, just, I'm gender binary. Today I'm a female. I'm going to go into the female bathroom. Like, that isn't really acceptable to me. But if you look like that gender, and I guess there's androgynous people. It's not a perfect science. But the point is, like, you can't just use that I'm transgender to get into whatever bathroom you want.
But do you think it should be a law, or do you think the private businesses should make that a rule within their
if
walls?
You make it private businesses, then...
Like, you walk over to PCC across the street, they say, on the bathroom it says, it's a very, PCC is like Whole Foods, it's a very socially liberal company, and in the bathroom, or on the bathrooms, it says, please feel free to use whichever bathroom.
It says that?
Yeah, it says right outside the bathroom, it says, please feel free to use whichever bathroom your gender feels comfortable with, or something like that, And they're a private business. I think, as a libertarian, I do not think it should be a law. I think the business over there has the right to say, you can use whatever bathroom you like, whereas another business, if they were more conservative, for instance, Hobby Lobby, thank you, that is the exact one, because I saw a bunch of fucking crosses there and shit like that. If they want to...
Okay, first of all, their selection of crosses is like not even that big.
Well, it's not just crosses, but they also have like Christian scripture.
They have other stuff too.
But they do have a lot of superhero stuff there, so
exactly.
I like Hobby Lobby. But if Hobby Lobby wants to say, hey, they see a transgender woman go into the women's restroom, and they want to go kick that person out, I believe that they should have the private right to do that.
I don't know. That's kind of weird. If you have a man who's dressed like a woman and looks reasonably like a woman, let's not say like one of those 50-50s where it's like, okay, you're obviously a man in a dress, but like you've obviously put effort into making yourself a woman, like you're going to say, oh, stop, we need you to go into the men's bathroom. That's where it gets a little complicated to me, is that like I mean, bathrooms have always been segregated by gender, and this whole new thing of letting people use whatever bathroom they want. My whole stance is just like, don't cause a distraction, and let's not make gateways for, men to go peeking on little girls because today's a day they feel like they're a female,
Yeah.
Let's not make it looks bad for transgenders and just humanity in general for somebody to be able to say, screw you, I'm going to skip the women's line because the men don't have a line.
Yeah.
And today that's what I feel like, it's just like, it's a middle finger to transgender
You've never
people.
done that before? You've never gone into the opposite bathroom because there was a line?
I have, but I wasn't skipping well, okay, so one time or a couple times I've gone into the women's bathroom, but it was because there was one of each, and you're talking about private bathrooms there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a different scenario.
Mm. I've known many girls who have gone into the men's restroom because there was too much of a line for the women's restroom.
I mean, I don't know. It seems like it's going to create, you're going to have, I don't personally really care. You're going to have people who are uncomfortable with it.
Well, there's also fathers, and it's happened many times when I was in the bathroom when I was taking a massive shit. A father will bring his daughter into the men's restroom, his young daughter, because she can't go to the bathroom on her own. It's like, that's a situation.
Is she going to the bathroom?
Yeah, he's taking her into the bathroom because she has to go to the bathroom.
But he's being supervised by her father.
Yeah, but I mean, I still feel like it's the same premise. He's bringing a girl in because it can be traumatizing for her. I mean, it could be I could try to peek over the stall if I was a creepy person, but it could also be she sees a bunch of guys at the stall. One of them, you've seen those guys who pee with their pants all the way down, his ass is hanging out, or maybe one of them turns around without putting his cock away first, and all of a sudden she's seeing another man's cock.
No, I mean, I'm not hung up on the bathroom situation, and I guess if you're asking me legally, I would say leave it to the states or the local municipalities. Business to business is kind of tricky, but in the end, just choose a bathroom and just go to it and come out and go along and mind your business. Okay.
My personal solution to this is I hate public bathrooms. I fucking hate public bathrooms. And the reason why is because they don't have enough privacy. I think if we just fix the privacy in the bathrooms, everything would be fine. Fred Meyer has a cool bathroom. I hate their bathrooms because they're super dirty and they never clean them. However, the stalls have walls that go from ceiling to floor, and the door barely has gaps above and below it. And it's wonderful. I feel like I have my own private room in there. Whereas bathrooms at my job, for example, have fucking gaps in there that anyone who walks by can see that you're taking a massive corn dump, And it's maybe if we had more privacy in the bathrooms, it wouldn't be such an issue because you wouldn't have to ever worry about people peeking in or trying to take a look, And I think more people would be comfortable with those as well.
Yeah.
Privacy in the bathrooms. That's
Alrighty.
the answer to that. Do you think trans people should be able to compete in sports or physical activities or even mental activities for that aspect?
So here's one of my...
Or not that they should be able to, but should they be competing with the people of their sex or of their identified gender?
Of their sex. And the reason is because what I say when it comes to, let's talk about sex changes, you can change what your genitals look like or what your chest looks like. You cannot change that every fiber going within you is going to be XX or XY from birth. And that includes physical prowess, sports ability. So that's one place I'm just going to say absolutely not, because that's a physical situation. That is not mental, that is physical. And maybe there should be transgender leagues. I don't know.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
I don't know what the answer is, but the answer is not I'm part of this 0.5%, so you have to let me in, Yeah. Because, why do you, you don't want to become a victim category. And that's what, happens is a lot of people get hung up on whatever their label is or whatever their minority is. And you can either fight for it or it can be your victim label that you use to get you stuff. And I don't know. I just don't, if I was competing against a guy who wanted to be a girl, I feel like I would take him down pretty well because a girl who wants to be a guy.
Yeah.
I feel like I would probably have the strength that they don't. But then again, they're taking testosterone. So, I mean, there's lots of, there's lots of ways to look at it. But ultimately, XX and XY is something you have from birth. Yeah. And it takes a lot to really change that part of you.
Yeah, no matter the hormones or even a sex change therapy. I mean, if you're an athlete and you're working out all the time and you're previously a male, if you were born a male and you're competing in a female league, you're just going to do better than them depending on what the sport is. But there's a lot of buff women who would be able to kick my ass. So that's it. I like what you said about a transgender league, that it almost seems like the men who are turning into women and the women who are turning into men would be on the same kind of competitive platform almost.
Maybe.
So that would be kind of an interesting idea. But the fact of the matter is I don't think there should be any laws against it necessarily.
No.
I think it should be done. The league should have their own rules, and
I mean,
I don't give a fuck about sports very much anyways, so I don't have a whole lot of opinions.
I agree with you on both of those. It should be up to the organizations. And as far as professional sports, here's the rant I always give about football. It takes 4 hours to play a 1 hour game that only has 13 minutes of action.
Yeah.
How does the math add up? It doesn't. 13 minutes of action over an hour game in 4 hours.
Yep.
Bull crap. So I hate watching professional sports because there's nothing that involves me. There's nothing interesting. Maybe that's why I like politics, is because there's substance, there's stuff to talk about, even after the game's over, you can talk about it.
Sports people can say that as well, but you and I just don't see that.
We just don't see that. So, but I mean, major MLB, Major League Baseball, I mean, women still aren't allowed in NFL. There's so far, they've not been forced to allow women, and I am afraid for the day when, it becomes law that they have to, not because...
That's a whole other subject, though.
Well,
the NFL has a whole lot of issues right now.
I'm just saying, the day it becomes law is, once again, the day we've had way too much judicial overreach and too much of the government telling us what we can and can't do.
Maybe transgender should only focus on sports that wouldn't really make a difference what their gender is, kind of like skateboarding. I'm pretty sure males and females are in the same league in skateboarding.
Tennis.
You know who Jordan Peterson is, right?
Yes, absolutely.
He got famous because he was against a law in Canada. I don't think it ever went through, but the law said misgendering someone should be a crime.
Oh my gosh.
Do you think that misgendering someone should be a crime?
Absolutely not.
Okay, we're on the same level with that one.
Do not word police me. I do not like political correctness, and it's because whenever I misgender somebody, it's because it's a mistake. Let me tell you, I worked with somebody. She wasn't transgender. She was a lesbian and very much looked like a guy. Everybody thought she's somebody I got hired with when I was 16. We got hired the same day, her and I. And I'm not going to give away her name, but it's pronounced female. And I turned it into I was like, oh, is it pronounced this, I thought it was a 13-year-old guy. And I was like, how'd you get hired? You're so young. And a few times, more than a few times, people would say, yeah, he blank. And she'd get this glare on her face and she'd say, she,
Yeah.
So she still identified as a woman, even though she very much looked like a man. But never once did she make a complaint. She always understood that, okay, it's because my hair's half an inch long. I wear collared shirts as opposed to the blouses that the females wear. So it's she wanted people to call her by the right gender, but she wasn't going to get too overly upset by being misgendered because she kind of knew it was, part of what she was doing, and no, people, I would say freedom of speech is, should protect me calling whoever I want, as long as I'm not harassing the person.
We're 54 minutes in.
Let's talk about the military.
I have stuff that I want to say for the end, but let's jump into the military. Back to the critical question, should the military allow transgenders? And remember, the reason why Republicans and Trump and people who don't want transgender people in the military is because of the cost of gender dysphoria, also known as gender identity disorder.
So, as far as the cost, from what I've heard, and again, these have probably all been liberal sources, is that the cost is a fraction. Should the government be paying for somebody's sex change? Absolutely 100% not. But that doesn't mean we have to exclude transgenders. My problem comes more with the fact that, for example, I have a growth on my brain, and because of this growth, it's on my pituitary gland. I have a testosterone level that is well below the level men are supposed to have. So technically, well, I should be, but I'm not taking them. I'm supposed to be on hormone replacements. I'm not on them because whenever I'm on them, I get like super emotional and like my parts of me start to hurt. You know, I'm not going to go into details, but if I was on that, or just if, you know, they knew I had a problem with low testosterone, I'd be excluded. I also take an antidepressant. I take an ADHD medication. There's like 20 reasons I would be excluded. And some of these, and for other reasons, are reasons transgendered people would also be excluded. So I don't think what we have to do is exclude transgender people, but what we should do is realize that a lot of what's required to be your perfect military person by itself excludes transgenders, because you have to not have emotional problems, mental problems. You can't have had a major surgery in the last however many times. You can't be on certain medications. Most of these are not categories that transgender people can get into. So the answer to the question is, should we exclude transgender people? No, but we should also treat them equally and fairly. And that means if your transgenderedness, sorry for the lack of the right word, causes you to not meet the high criteria of the military, then you don't get a free pass because of that. Mm-hmm. So if I was told, well, you're on testosterone supplements, Matt, so you can't join the military, but then a female to male who is pretty much exactly like me in every other way, but they were on testosterone supplements, got to join, that's giving them a privilege because of that. But let me talk about the Supreme Court's decision. So the Supreme Court decided they're temporarily going to let the ban go into effect, and it was 5-4 decision, and it was split down the conservative and liberal lines. And it's kind of the first big decision that, you know, the people were scared of when the conservatives got the majority on the Supreme Court. I don't understand why they let it go into effect without it reaching. They said, sure, it can go into effect while it's in the court system, and if it makes its way up to us and we decide to take the case, awesome. For the meantime, we're going to let it go into effect. I don't know what their reasoning was behind it, because they didn't.
They didn't give reasoning from what I read.
They did something what's called per curiam, which is where they just release a decision by the numbers. So they just say by a 5-4 vote, we are allowing this to happen. And it's usually when they're not setting a precedent. They're making a temporary decision. Mm-hmm. So one of the things is the legality of it. From my understanding, Obama tried to make it to where Title IX, which involves discrimination, he tried to say that sex includes gender identity. I disagree with that. I believe those are two different things. So therefore, and that's also Trump's stance. That is not my stance because it's Trump's stance. I had that stance when Obama was still in office, is that you can't call sex and gender identity the same thing, which is what Obama claimed. So I think that by that definition, transgender is not a federally protected class. So what the next step should be, if transgender people want to make sure they're not excluded from the military and things like that, is they need to become a protected class. And again, I think that should be done through Congress, but do I agree with the president's decision and how he handled it? No. But do I think he is legally allowed to make that decision because they're not a protected class? And because he listed reasons that are somewhat valid, even if weak, and because he is the commander-in-chief of the military, he is the highest-ranking military official, I would say he's allowed to make that decision. Now, I know Congress has been talking about making a law that says, anybody who wants to serve can serve. And that's great. And once they do that, that's awesome. Until then, he's the one branch of government that has said, I'm in charge of the military. This is how it's going to be. The Supreme Court's upheld that. So sounds like there's more of a fight that needs to take place for that to be undone.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Thank you for all the information on the Supreme Court. I appreciate that. For myself personally, I'm a libertarian. I am generally against how much we spend in the military anyways, and I'm against war for the most part. I think we should only go to war. I think we should have a strong military for defense purposes only, and I think we should only go to war for retribution. 9/11 happened. We should go over there and kill the person who committed it. That's not what happened, but eventually it did. But that's not.
Yeah, it took a while.
We went to the wrong country. So with those things in mind about me, I think anyone who wants to join the military and who is willing to put their life on the line for our country should be respected and should be allowed to. I think the military should not put so much healthcare resources into the soldiers. I think the military should pay the soldiers more so that they can get their own healthcare if needed. Not significantly more so that they can afford any healthcare, but they should just be paid more and lower their healthcare options, because I think the government should only pay for their healthcare if what the healthcare is needed for is something that they got like if they got injured in the military.
Yeah, that's
if
reasonable.
they had stress in the military, they should be welcome to.
How about like any other employer? They offer them reasonable health insurance for while they're not at work, and if something happens at work, it's workers' comp.
Yeah, but since it's a government program, and I'm generally against the government, the health insurance I think should only be for things that happen on the job. So they shouldn't have health insurance. But you have to remember that this health insurance thing is part of a huge, larger conversation that you and I both have differing opinions on. My opinions are probably extreme libertarian. I'm not exactly. We haven't talked about healthcare a whole lot between you and me. I'm sure there's somewhere on the conservative angle, but like the healthcare discussion is such a bigger discussion. We don't have time for it. We're at a minute 2 or an hour 2 right now, but I think that the government shouldn't be spending so much money on these soldiers. They should be paying them more, but not enough. Like, people think if I say pay them more that it means just like instead of pay for their health insurance, give them a shit ton more money. Just pay them a little bit more, like $5 more for, I don't know if it's hourly or salary or whatever. Give them a little bit more money and don't cover their health insurance except for things that happen while they're in the military. I think that will solve the problem. It's like, you don't want to allow transgender people in the military because you think they cost the military too much. Fine. Don't take care of the transgender people that way. If they want to get transgender reassignment surgery or they need therapy for being having gender dysphoria, just pay them a little bit more and they can go get that therapy or hormones or whatever on their own. I don't think that there should be any reason for them to be banned from the military for those purposes.
So I'm not going to go hugely into that. I will say I largely disagree, but we don't have time for the full conversation. But one thing we didn't talk about was kind of the third, well, it kind of ties into the second, the mental aspect of should transgenders be in the military, is unit cohesion, and the military having to work as a team, them needing to be clear-headed. So I just wanted to bring that up. again, have a strong opinion on it. I don't know what military life is like. I've never been in the military. I would not be allowed in the military. I would almost be guaranteed to come back with PTSD, even just from basic training. But I don't know too much about it. I know there's concerns about how they would, I guess, assimilate with the other soldiers. So there's also that aspect, but I don't really have a huge opinion on that at this moment. So yeah.
Okay, I have some quick things. I'll try to run through these real quick because I know we're over an hour, and we're probably going to go a little bit long on this, but I just want to get some things out there that I think are important about this subject. I want to know feminists and women's perspective about transgenders because the feminists, like, most of them I feel are on the side of transgenders, but there are some feminists that are like, these men are trying to
They're called
get these. I can't remember the name.
TERF, is it?
I don't know. But I saw a feminist who was against transgenders on Fox News the other day, and that was pretty interesting. But I wish I could get a feminist or female's perspective on men becoming women and how they feel about that. Like with I think it was Time magazine or something doing Women of the Year for Caitlyn Jenner. You know, doesn't that kind of like hurt their cause? And you know, men are better at women than everything, including being a woman.
Yeah, exactly right.
And another thing, a quick story I have. I went to Fatburger the other day because every Friday is Fatburger Friday. I love Fatburger.
Wait, what? Hold on. I love Fatburger too. What happens on Fatburger Friday?
We go to Fatburger Friday and we get Fatburger. You can start joining me, bro.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant there was a special or something.
No. It's
not
just,
interested.
It's just a holiday that
Okay.
I celebrate in my home. You can join me
Continue.
sometime. Anyways, I went to Fatburger the other day because it was Friday, and there was a transgender guy there, and it was a Republican's nightmare. It was a really old guy, balding, and it literally looked like he was just wearing women's clothes and earrings to go in the women's restroom. And I saw this person, it really made me think, because I don't have a whole lot of interaction with transgender people. There's not a whole lot of them here, but most of the ones I've seen have been pretty authentic. But this guy I saw did not look authentic, and that concerned me, you know, in that I understood the Republicans' perspective on that. There's a chance that most likely he was probably genuine, but his outside appearance did not look genuine. It looked like he was a creepy guy trying to go into the women's restroom.
I've heard that brought up before, that why are there so many transgender people that aren't, you know, like, it's still a guy with a shaved head, but it puts on a dress. Like, it's like, why aren't they actually trying if they really feel like this, you know?
Yeah, they're not trying to be passable in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
The thing I have to say about that is I still, all the things I said before about how I think they should be treated equally and stuff all still stands. But it's for the defensive. I think bathrooms just need to be more private. I think there needs to be more privacy in bathrooms, and I think that's the solution to the bathroom issue. Another thing is it's kind of trendy from what I hear. I've spoken to young people who are in high school right now, and it's a trendy thing to call yourself trans or be gender fluid or non-conforming to the binary gender identity, you know.
There was a prominent doctor who came out recently, I forget what country, but he was one of the main doctors specializing in that, and he said, okay, kids are way being overdiagnosed with transgender or gender dysphoria, you know, so.
And that's concerning to me. That hurts the entire movement. Like, if people are just doing this for fun because they want a little bit of extra attention, I understand experimenting. I think we all go through a phase of like, I'll call myself gay to get attention, or am I gay? Let me look at gay porn and find out what's going on, you know? I think we all kind of go through that sexual realization. And if you're just trying out transgender to find yourself and see if that's what's right for you, then all the power to you. But if you're doing it because it's like, I just want a little bit of extra attention, that's wrong. It's just like Jussie Smollett right now. Yeah, if you've been following what's going on with him, he lied about being attacked for being gay and black. It's not confirmed that that's what happened, but that seems to be the strong case right now. And it's like he's hurting the cause. Now Republicans can say,
hate crimes are fake.
Hate crimes are fake, exactly. And so if these high schoolers and middle schoolers are just being trans to be trendy, it's hurting the movement, and that's wrong. I want to know how. Another quick point on that. Kids who are under the age of puberty, I don't think should be transgender at all. Like elementary school kids, I'm for lowering the age of consent, but lowering it to when people are at their sexual puberty age, when their body is ready for sex, that's when people can start finding their gender identity. But elementary school kids, fuck no, that's retarded.
I don't think
they should be playing games. They shouldn't be wondering what gender they are.
I think people, like, some parents are like, my child's 8, I wonder if they're gay. It's like, why? How about your child be nothing until they reach puberty?
Seriously, all they want to do is watch Minecraft videos, for fuck's sake. Next thing, how do intersex people feel about this? Because there are people who are intersex who their gender cannot be defined at birth because they have the traits of both men and women. I want to know how the intersex people feel about the whole transgender movement. That's something that, do they feel attacked by this? Like, how come these people who are clearly female or clearly male get to call themselves gender non-binary when I, who is actually a non-binary person because I have the female and male aspects of gender, how do they feel about this? That's something that concerns me, that these people don't feel there's no representation for them. Two people I highly respect, I don't know if you know these people, but Jeffree Star and James Charles. Have you heard of either of these people?
No.
I don't fully support Jeffree Star necessarily because I'm not really into body modification. I think that people who get plastic surgery to get like bigger lips or like part of the whole sex change thing is that people will change the shape of their chest or their hips or their facial structure to look like the gender they want to be assigned as. But Jeffree Star and James Charles are both men who put a shitload of makeup on themselves, and I respect these people. And the reason why is because I think a lot of the transgender issue for me personally is play with the cards you're dealt. If you were born a man but you want to be a woman, just be a really fucking fabulous man. Learn how to do makeup and make yourself look beautiful, but still be a man, if you know what I'm saying. Like, there's no need to go through the risks of doing hormone therapy and sex change surgery.
I've heard that argument too. Like, somebody said one time, like on a transgender forum I was reading or something, they said, everybody's talking about like changing, like what happened to the days when you just had to like deal with whatever life threw at you, and that's kind of what you're talking about.
I think if you make mistakes, you gotta live up to your mistakes, and if life throws a weird card at you, just kind of try to live with it the best you can. And I really have a lot of respect for these men who probably would prefer to be women, but who said, I'm a man, but I'm going to be a fucking fabulous man. And I have a lot of respect for those people. Do you think transgender people will ever truly be accepted by society, or do you think they will always be outcast? I know that's a large question to throw at you.
Part of the reason I'm hesitant to answer is because if a transgender person happens to listen to this, I don't want them to feel discouraged or anything, but no, I don't, because I had on the notes that I was reading along for today, LGB versus the T.
Yeah.
The one thing that's different is the LG and the B can look in the mirror and be like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
It's just they're attracted to the same gender, which when it comes down to, that's something everybody has in their mind is what they're attracted to. The T part is what you are versus what you feel you are. And I don't know that it's ever going to be something that it might become something to where it can be so well done that it's something people don't talk about. Like, you see a woman, she's awesomely gorgeous, and like you just want to take her home. She was born a male, but like surgery's been able to correct it. Maybe we've even been able to figure out some of the mind stuff behind it. That might happen, but as far as where we stand now, do I think it'll become accepted as is? No.
Yeah, it's kind of a hard question to answer, but I think I can't tell the future, but as it stands right now, I think it will kind of be always outside the norm. If anything, in our lifetimes, I think it will get to the point where it's kind of, obviously I'm always nice and respectful of these people when I see them, but I don't think they'll ever feel fully like people aren't looking them behind their backs, like giving them the side eye, like look at that, there's one of them over there kind of thing. I don't think we'll ever get past that. But also kind of every minority does that. I mean, if you live in a predominantly white area, when a black person walks in the room, everyone kind of like looks in. It's like at a comic book store when a girl walks in, everyone looks at the girl, you know. I don't think that feeling will ever go away, but lots of people feel that way. If I walk into Victoria's Secret, people give me that look, you know. I shouldn't be in Victoria's Secret.
Probably not.
Last thing, transgender leads to a lot of questions about transracial, transdisabled, trans species, trans age. Those are all way different discussions, but it's a lot of how far can this go? You know,
It will go super freaking far.
The thing that made me bring that up is I saw a transgender dragon lady, and that concerned me deeply.
So she thought she was the opposite.
It was a male
sex.
to female,
okay.
And then got a bunch of body modifications to look like a dragon. She split her tongue, put her nostrils on the side of her nose, cut off her ears. I think she briefly mentioned getting castrated, so I don't know what's going on there. It was freaky. That I think is like
if you're
10
doing
steps
that
too
because
far.
you're part of like goth lifestyle or whatever, that's one thing. If you're doing that because you honestly think you're a dragon, like please seek help immediately. You know.
This person, as far as I'm aware, had HIV and was supposedly gonna die. So they're just like, fuck it, I don't want to.
Well, then that's why they need Jesus.
I don't want to die a human. I want to die a dragon. Okay, I've said my final word. What is your final word, Matt?
I have a lot of sympathy for transgender people, and I can't understand the situation. You know, like it's one of those things where I can say like, oh, I can only imagine, and the person says, no, you can't. You haven't been there. You know, you're right. Like it's like people say like, you know, you'll never understand what it's like to be white and, you know, or to be black and the problems we've gone through. And it's like, you're absolutely right. What's your point? Like, get to it, you know? I can only imagine how terrible it is. My final word is, you know, I try to think of things from a logical standpoint. To me, cutting off your parts of your body isn't logical. It's not condoned really in any case except either medically or for, you know, transgender surgery. But I think it's really important that, you know, despite my disagreement with those types of things, that they are still humans just like I'm a human, and that I would hope that anybody who feels discouraged or feels like they don't belong would seek help and knows that God loves them.
God loves them.
God does love them.
Goddamn right he does.
What? I mean, that's honestly my final word, is that I know there's hurting people out there, and, you know, Jesus says, come as you are. So
they just got to find a church that will accept them.
Sometimes it can be harder to come to the church. You don't have to go to the church to go to God, though.
That's true. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If I do this quick, we'll be under an hour and 18. Please like, comment, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. We'll read your comments on 8.5. Email address is quadrant4politics@gmail.com. YouTube and SoundCloud. We'll see you in the next one.
If you are overly hateful in your comments, they will not be read.
Or they will be read and laughed at.
Yeah, that's true. It depends on how clever they are, but we won't be accepting outrageous hate mail for the most part.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.